helping the Comanches begin the difficult adjustment to life on the reservation. While Quanah and the Comanches struggled to adapt, other reservation tribes were struggling just to stay alive. Northern Paiute Sarah Winnemucca spoke out.
A family numbering 8 persons got 2 blankets and 3 shirts. 23 persons got 4 blankets, 3 pieces of red flannel, 3 shirts, 3 hooks and lines, and 2 kettles. Our children were shivering. This is how your civilization treats us. Are we to be blamed for thinking that you care for us like the snake in the grass?
The Kiowas also lost faith in empty government promises. By 1881, the tribes of the Plains had been pacified. Satank, Crazy Horse, many other Indian leaders were dead. Sitting Bull was a prisoner in Dakota Territory giving interviews to newspapers. But in the rugged Southwest, a charismatic warrior would spearhead a desperate guerrilla war and become a legend of the Wild West. His name, Geronimo.
Remember the rule in war. Men may return or they may be killed. If I am killed, no one need mourn for me. My people have all been killed, and I too will die, if need be. Geronimo.
In 1881, 4 bands of the Chiricahua Apache were considered the only free Indians. Led by Geronimo, they terrorized ranchers, settlers, and miners throughout the Southwest. General George Crook, a veteran of several Indian campaigns, was sent to run the Apaches to ground.
Troops were sent out to search for us. It was, of course, impossible for them to locate the camp they sought. While they searched, we watched them from our hiding places and laughed at their failures. Geronimo.
An Apache scout guided Crook's forces to the renegade band.
We found them in camp in such a position that 1,000 men could not have surrounded them with any possibility of capturing them. They were able, upon the approach of any enemy, to scatter and escape through dozens of ravines and canyons, which would shelter them from pursuit. General George Crook, United States Army.
It took 1/4 of the entire U.S. Army to finally track down Geronimo and his band of 24 Apaches. They were the last American Indians to surrender. Nearly 60 years old, Geronimo met with General Nelson Miles.
General Miles said to me, I will build you a house. I will fence you much land. I will give you cattle, horses, mules, and farming implements. You will live with your tribe. I said to General Miles, all of the officers have talked that way. I hardly believe you. He said, this time, it is the truth.
Instead, Geronimo and 500 other Apaches were put in irons and sent to a Florida prison. Tribes everywhere found themselves at the mercy of the government Indian agents. Red Cloud fought against this.
Everything was done to break the power of the real chiefs. I saw the men paid by the government to help us, all very busy making money for themselves, but doing nothing for us. We were prisoners, not in the hands of the army, but in the hands of robbers. Red Cloud, Pine Ridge Agency.
The reservations were intended to be the school for change. If you fed them, housed them, and Christianized them, Indians would turn into good white men.
The United States government had adopted a policy of assimilation, and they were taking the children and sending them off to boarding schools, and they were cutting their hair, and they were forcing them to speak English instead of their native languages.
Indians on the reservations subsisted on government food allotments. Dr. Charles Eastman, one of the first Indian physicians, described the monthly beef issue at Red Cloud's agency.
Thousands of Indians came to the agency for rations. It was a veritable Wild West array that greeted my astonished eyes. As the cattle were turned out in quick succession, we soon had a good imitation of an old-time buffalo hunt.
Supplying reservations was a profitable business, and many Indian agents made fortunes selling goods promised to the Indians on the open market instead.
I want a trader that trades with us at the same prices that he trades with the whites. One that will not charge an Indian more than he does a white man. John Grass, Blackfeet Sioux.
Billed as the Paiute Princess, Sarah Winnemucca, accompanied by her father and brother, battled the corruption by speaking out to white audiences.
You who have knelt upon Plymouth Rock, covenanting with God to make this land the home of the free and the brave, I'm crying out to you for justice. Your Christian minister will hold my people against their will. Not because he loves them, but because it puts money in his pockets.
In this unsettling atmosphere, many tribes were attracted by new and defiant prophets. A northern Paiute medicine man, Wovoka, had a vision. The white people would disappear, and Indian life would revert to its old ways. A ceremonial dance called the ghost dance by whites would help bring about this new dawn for an old culture. While many tribes were skeptical, the ghost dance found wide acceptance and devout believers.
You, who eat 3 times each day, can't understand what starving Indians feel. There was no hope on earth, and God seemed to have forgotten us. The people did not know, they did not care. They snatched at the hope. Red Cloud, Pine Ridge Agency.
The dead are to return. The buffalo are to return. The Dakota people will get back their own way of life. The white people will soon go away, and that will mean happier times for us once more. Pine Ridge Sioux.
Fearing another bloody Indian outbreak, the Bureau of Indian Affairs banned the ghost dance. Indian police were sent to arrest Sitting Bull, a ghost dance supporter. But instead, Sitting Bull and his son were killed. Sioux leader Bigfoot, fearing a similar fate, led his band toward Red Cloud's reservation at Pine Ridge, where he thought they would be safe. However, troopers of the 7th Cavalry surrounded the fleeing Sioux at Wounded Knee Creek. The soldiers began to disarm the Indians.
Guns and knives, even the needle, big needles they had, you know, so moccasin with it. They took all of them, even the tent, they burned it up too.
Dewey Beard, a Lakota Sioux, was there.
We were not looking for war. One Indian's gun was fired by accident. I heard later it belonged to Sitting Bull's deaf-mute son who couldn't hear the order to disarm. After that shot, the soldiers let loose with everything they had. Unarmed, we didn't have a chance. Men, women, even babies were shot down. They opened up on us with cannons.
Dewey Beard's entire family, along with about 150 Sioux and 25 soldiers, died that day. In the years following Wounded Knee, Native Americans proved resilient. In spite of the hardships, Quanah Parker's life bridged 2 worlds.
Quanah Parker was the individual that helped the Comanches make that transition from the old world and the old ways into a modern world in new ways. But it still retained elements of the past.
Quanah lobbied Washington against the breakup of Comanche lands. He was appointed a judge, he served as a sheriff, he even had a Texas town named after him. And in 1905, Quanah, Geronimo, and other Indian leaders rode in President Theodore Roosevelt's inaugural parade. 40 years after his mother died, Quanah Parker reburied her and his baby sister in the Comanche homeland.
My mother loved the Indian wildlife so well. She did not want to go back to the white folks. We are all the same people anyway, God says. I love my mother. I like my white people.
Although many prominent Sioux disagreed with Red Cloud during his life, he did what he thought was best for his people. In 1903, he turned his chieftainship over to his son Jack.
Life for Indian people did not end at Wounded Knee. I think at that point, Indian people looked within themselves and said, we must survive. We must find a way to survive. And they began to make changes in their ways of living that was going to guarantee that survival. It's like a circle. You draw a circle, and it's a sacred circle. And where does that begin and where does that end? It continues, and there's no beginning.